Welcome to SF Bay Insider and a rare tour of Ritual Coffee Roastery.
This is the only week of the year we open it up for tourists, so we're not necessarily built for that. So the one area that I want you to be careful of is the roasters are hot. They're like ovens, so you don't want to touch them. The back of this roaster, as we walk by it, you'll see that it has some exposed belts and stuff. Don't stick your hands in there. This Saturday is actually the 7th anniversary of Ritual. It started Ritual with the spot on Valencia Street. Have you guys been there? Yes? Maybe? Okay. So it started as a neighborhood coffee bar, and obviously I had great aspirations that it would be the best coffee in the Bay Area, and it would change how people perceive coffee. I think that's happened in the last 7 years, which is exciting. And when we started roasting, it was all there in the shop, kind of in the back of the cafe. And after a couple of years, we had really outgrown doing it that way. If any of you were there in, say, 2008, 2009, you might have had to sit on the coffee stacks to drink the coffee because there was just, we had to take away so much seating to make room for the roastery. So when we found this building, we were really excited. We moved in here in 2009, and we were so desperate for space that all we did was put the roaster up, and everything else was on folding tables. And so this building has kind of been because we needed to use it as soon as we got it, it's been a work in progress. And just 1 year ago, we opened the 4th coffee bar, which is in Hayes Valley, as part of the Prophecy Project. So it's actually a coffee bar built in a shipping container, which is especially cool because, well, for two things. It's that little project that we're part of. There's us, Beer Garden, Smitten Ice Cream, and that was the first permitted use of a shipping container in the city of San Francisco, which is exciting because now hopefully that paves the way for other people to use shipping containers as houses or stores, things like that. It's a great development. But it was especially meaningful to us because, as you'll see in the next part of the tour, that's how our coffee comes to us. That's how all the coffee comes into the country, is through shipping containers. So it's got a special meaning to me, I guess. So this is where we store our green coffee. Green coffee is really the heart of what we do. No matter how good we are at roasting coffee or at brewing coffee, if we weren't starting with amazing green coffee, amazing ingredients, we wouldn't be able to have the end products. Have you guys ever seen green coffee before?
Yep.
All right, we'll step right up. And you can even, it's okay to put your hands in it because it's going to be roasted. And you can even smell it. This is coffee that's ready to be roasted. Coffee is, at this point I kind of need to explain where coffee comes from because most people haven't, beyond thinking about roasted beans, they haven't thought about what, had to happen to get the roasted beans ready for your cup of coffee in the morning. So coffee is the seed of a fruit. It's a small cherry. It's a little bit bigger than a cranberry, smaller than what we would consider a cherry, but it's red and it's sweet, just like a cherry. There are 2 seeds typically in each cherry, which is why, if you look at the beans, there's kind of a flat side. So there's 2 little beans inside the cherry. And processing is the step that takes coffee cherries from being, the thing on the tree to being something that's ready to be roasted and turned into coffee. Coffee only comes from the tropics, and typically the higher the altitude, the better. So if you think about the countries that are known for having great coffee, it's Colombia, Kenya, Guatemala, really mountainous countries in between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. So we source our coffee directly from coffee producers, and that is really what separates us, I think, from all the other amazing, coffee companies. What that means is Steve, who is probably wandering around here at some point, you'll get to see him. He's my coffee buyer. He works just for us. He spends about 4 months out of the year, maybe sometimes 5 months out of the year, in foreign countries, just tasting coffee and visiting farms. we send a truck to Oakland a couple times a week to pick up coffee. So this is, maybe a week's worth of coffee. We're really fortunate to be in San Francisco because so much coffee comes into the port of Oakland. And there's a giant warehouse called the Annex where all of the coffee companies of the Bay Area store their coffee. And it's just like, it's crazy. It's just a giant warehouse that's stacked, 30 feet high with pallets of coffee. Can't go too much. Let me explain a little bit about the roasting process. So a roaster is kind of like an oven and a dryer. It's like an oven and then it's gas powered. It's cast iron on the inside. And the roasting temperature is comparable to what you would use in your kitchen. It's more like a dryer in that there's a rotating drum on the inside that keeps the coffee moving constantly so that it's getting roasted evenly. We use computer data logging software. We have temperature probes that we added to our vintage roaster. Those are not controlling the roasting in any way. John is controlling the roasting. But what they're doing is tracking every roast so that we have a record of exactly how each batch of coffee was roasted. But it's very much, a hands-on craft in that John is listening to how the coffee sounds, paying attention to the time and the temperature. And you'll see as it gets close to being done, he takes the dryer out, looks at it, he's smelling it. And so it's definitely a balance between, a science and an art in a way. This is our cupping lab. And like I said, when we moved into this building, it's all been kind of a work in progress, and this is the next big project that we need to do is have a real cupping lab instead of this. Part of what the roasters do is out of every batch, they take a sample of beans once it's been roasted and label it with some information about the roasting time, temperature, things like that, what date it was roasted, and which coffee it is. And it all gets cupped here by Steve, who's my coffee buyer, Joel, who's the head roaster, John, who's the production roaster, and Ben, who does quality control, to make sure that we're getting out of every batch exactly what we think we need. In production. And so this is kind of the last, once the coffee is roasted and it makes it through the QC process, then it comes over here to be bagged and go out the door, whether it's to our coffee bars or to a wholesale account. For many years it was all done by hand, and then last year we finally got this fancy machine that helps us weigh the coffee out, so you can just press a button and it gives you exactly 12 ounces of coffee or exactly 5 pounds. The story behind the logo is that I had friends who were graphic designers when I was first starting Ritual, and I asked them to make me a logo, and I gave them some simple parameters. And I came back to them 2 weeks later, and they had 10 things, 10 ideas. 9 of them were what I asked for, and they were fine. And this was the 10th. And when I first saw it, I was like, whoa, it's crazy, it's really loud, and it's kind of political, and it's kind of a lot. And they are, and then I shuffled back through the pile, and I was like, it's really good. And so their explanation for it was, in the meeting, when I said, well, our coffee is going to be better, they were like, what do you mean? Coffee is coffee. And I was like, no. That's because, you're saying that because you haven't ever had really good coffee. Really good coffee can be amazing, it can be sweet, really delicious. And our cafe is gonna focus on that. So what they took away from that was, what you're doing is revolutionary. So you need a revolutionary icon.
So this I'm actually just using a really delicious coffee that has been sitting here for a couple weeks in a bag, just because I just wanted to test the recipe. I'm going to send it to the New York Times. He's doing an article on it.
And now we get to taste the results of this experimental iced coffee recipe. Wow, that's a delicious cup of coffee.